The first time the auctioneer's hammer fell, the crowd didn't cheer, it shivered. On a makeshift stage in the dust of an Arizona trading post, a woman stood towering above all others. Her shoulders broad, her arms powerful as tree trunks, her height almost unnatural. She was an Apache woman, nearly 7 feet tall. The men in the crowd didn't see her as a human being, but as a curiosity, a burden, and to some, an opportunity for profit. The whispers spread like wildfire, too big to marry, too big to breed, marked for slaughter. The unspoken truth was uglier still. In desperate times, people were cruel enough to treat her body as though it were cattle. And on that day, her fate seemed sealed. But fate has a way of bending when kindness walks in. From the back of the crowd, a man leaned against the post, hat tilted low. He wasn't like the others. His name was Luke, a cowboy, weathered by trail dust and storms, but with eyes that still carried the shine of decency. He had come to town only to buy feed for his horses. Instead, he found himself staring at the trembling giantess, her eyes lowered, her hands bound, her dignity hanging by a thread. And in that moment, something inside him said, if no one stands for her, she will be lost. The auctioneer barked out the first bid. Men laughed, tossing coins like they were buying scraps. Then Luke's voice cut through the noise. $10. The laughter stopped. 20, barked another, more out of spite than intention. 30, Luke countered. Soon, no one dared challenge him. The cowboy's voice had weight, not of wealth, but of resolve. When the hammer fell, Luke didn't just buy a woman, he rescued a soul. On the trail home, she didn't speak. The giantess walked behind his horse, silent but watchful. At the ranch, Luke did something no one expected. He cut her ropes and handed her water. No orders. No cruel jokes, just kindness. You're free here, he said softly, no one owns you. The words cracked something inside her. She had prepared for chains, for death, for humiliation, but never for freedom. Her name, she whispered at last, was Nida. Days turned to weeks. Nida, once treated as a burden, became the strongest blessing the ranch had ever known. She lifted barrels alone, built fences twice as fast, and calmed horses others feared to touch. The children of nearby settlers, who once stared at her in fear, began to laugh when she carried them on her shoulders, higher than they had ever been. But still, scars ran deep. At night, Luke sometimes found her sitting apart, staring at her hands. Too big, she murmured once. Too much. Luke knelt beside her. You're not too much, you're exactly enough. Then came the test. One stormy evening, a neighbor's barn caught fire. The family was trapped, children screaming within. Men tried to form a chain, but the flames were too fierce. Without a second thought, Nida charged through the fire. Her massive frame shielded the children as she carried them out, one under each arm, coughing but alive. The town that once mocked her now saw her for what she truly was, not a beast to be sold, but a savior. The whispers changed. She's strong enough to save, she's brave enough to lead. She's human, like us. And so the story turned. The Apache Giantess who had been too big to breed, became the woman too big-hearted to be forgotten. Luke never claimed her as property. Instead, he offered her a place, a partnership, and, eventually, his heart. Their love wasn't born from beauty as the world defines it, but from kindness, respect, and the courage to see beyond what others saw. The lesson of Nida's life was simple yet eternal. True worth isn't measured by size, shape, or what the world calls you. It's measured by the love you give, the lives you touch, and the courage to keep standing tall, even when the world tries to cut you down. And for those who once mocked, they could only bow their heads in shame, because the woman they wanted to destroy had become the one who carried them all. In the end, Nida wasn't too big to love, she was exactly the size of grace. They called her too big to marry, too big to bear children, too big to be wanted. And in a dusty corner of an Arizona trading post, that cruel judgment became her sentence. She stood bound on a wooden platform, a woman unlike any the town had seen, nearly 7 feet tall. Her shadow stretched long in the late sun, her arms were strong, her shoulders wide, her very presence intimidating to men who feared what they could not control. Her face was beautiful in its strength, but her eyes told another story, tired, heavy, humiliated. Her name was Nida, though few bothered to call her that. To them, she was nothing but a spectacle. A giantess. A woman marked not for love, but for mockery, and maybe even slaughter. The whispers stabbed at her ears, too big to breed. Better off as meat. She ain't a wife, she's a beast. The auctioneer raised his hand, barking prices like a butcher naming cuts of beef. Men laughed, tossing coins, treating her fate like a joke. And just when her heart sank, when she prepared to be handed off like cattle, one voice broke through. A cowboy stood at the back, leaning against a post, hat pulled low. His name was Luke. He wasn't the richest man there, not the strongest, but there was something in his voice, steady, certain, that hushed the jeers. The bidding died. Nobody wanted to go against the cowboy who sounded like he meant it. When the hammer fell, Luke had won. And just like that, Nida's life changed. On the trail to his ranch, Nida walked in silence, her wrists still bound. She expected orders, cruelty, maybe worse. But when they reached his land, Luke dismounted, cut her ropes, and handed her water. She blinked in disbelief. Free? The word felt like a stranger on her tongue. But when she whispered her name, Nida, it was the first time she had spoken it in months. Days passed. Slowly, Nida's strength, once mocked, proved to be her gift. She lifted heavy barrels alone, built fences stronger than any man, and even tamed horses no one else could approach. Children from nearby farms who once hid from her now ran to her, giggling as she carried them high on her shoulders. She made them feel like they could touch the clouds. But in the stillness of night, Luke sometimes found her sitting alone, staring at her hands. Luke knelt beside her, looking straight into her eyes. "You're not too much. You're exactly enough." One stormy evening, cries split the air. A neighbor's barn was ablaze, flames tearing through the wood. Inside, children trapped. Men tried to form a line, but the fire roared too strong. Smoke filled the air, heat forced them back. No one dared go in. She stormed through the flames, her massive frame shielding her face and chest. She kicked down the burning door and found the children huddled inside. Scooping them under her arms, she staggered through the fire, shielding them with her own body. The barn collapsed just as she burst out into the stormy night. She fell to her knees, coughing, her dress singed, but the children, alive. The parents wept, clinging to her hands. The crowd, once cruel, stood in silence, their jeers swallowed by awe. The whispers that once mocked her now change. She's strong enough to save. She's brave enough to lead. She's more woman than we ever deserved. From that night forward, Nida was no longer seen as a giantess to laugh at, but as a savior to honor. Luke never claimed her as property. He never called her his prize. Instead, he offered her something far rarer, a partnership, a home, a heart. And in time, love grew, not from pity, not from obligation, but from respect, from the kind of bond that sees past size, past scars, past what the world says you're worth. Their love was quiet, steady, real. And when people asked Luke why he stepped forward at the auction, why he risked his money and reputation, his answer was always the same. Because no one else did, and because she was worth it. Nida's story carries a lesson for all of us. The world is quick to judge, by appearance, by difference, by how well you fit into someone else's mold. Too often, people are measured not by their heart, but by the weight of their body, the height of their frame, the shape of their life. But true worth lies in courage, in kindness, in love that sees deeper than the surface. And Nida, the woman once marked for slaughter, proved she wasn't too big to be loved. She was exactly the size of grace.